So I now welcome you, Ken, to take over the meeting.
Okay, thank you so much, Matrida, and welcome everyone on board to this discussion we're going to have today on the role of emerging SMEs on the economy. Without much ado, I want to introduce the panelists. So we'll start with Wangari Kabiru. You could say in a few words who you are, what you do, and then we'll jump on to Kevin, and then we'll go back to Peter.
Okay. Good morning, good evening, and good afternoon from where someone is being able to join in. My name is Wangari Kabiru, and in this context, I am the convener for Wasiliana Hub Mediators. Wasiliana Hub Mediators is a great place to be. It is a community of professional mediators, and that is a growing community here in Kenya and also across Africa. We are designed as a platform that builds together a community, and at the same time also developing technology to develop professional mediation. Mediation is a practice that allows people, nations, and organizations, even SMEs, to be able to get alternatives by which they can be able to resolve any disagreements or any disputes that they do have. I'm delighted to be part of this conversation because the aspect of mediation and also just looking at alternative ways to be able to manage, to handle disputes is actually a very savvy strategy for the SMEs that are actually growing, and also the micro enterprises and startups, and I'm delighted to be part of this conversation. Also because, as we know, that the conversation about the micro, small, and medium enterprises is that they're the drivers to the economy. So I am delighted to be in this conversation. Thank you very much, Cesok, for the invitation, and I'm looking forward to be part of this very exciting panel, and also with our great moderator, Mr. Ndua. Asante sana. Back to you.
Thank you so much, Wangari. Kevin, briefly, you could introduce yourself.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you clearly.
Thank you. My name is Kevin Gikonyo. I'm a consultant at the moment for social entrepreneurship, but I have a background in SME advisory, both from a consultancy perspective and a banking perspective. I've been in the banking world for more than 10 years, loaning the SMEs, and now I'm jumping ship. Now my heart is different in terms of advisory. So I know SMEs inside out, and I'm glad to be part of this conversation. What I can say is that having advised SMEs and also the social enterprises, there's a lot that can happen within that space. And I'm glad even politically we are speaking about bottom-up approach. And the SMEs and the micro SMEs, basically we are speaking into what they are going to do and to be the next drivers of the economy. I believe they are the magnum carta for driving the economies, not just in Africa but beyond, because we see the the Western world, especially Germany, they actually developed because of the SMEs. So I'm glad to be part
of. Yeah, we seem to have lost Kevin. Peter, could you briefly introduce yourself, Peter Iganjo?
Thank you so much. Peter Waiganjo is my name. I work with Amref Health Africa in Kenya, and I lead the sustainability agenda within the organization through social entrepreneurship as one of the means of diversifying our resources as an organization. I think I'll get more time to speak, and just because of time, over to you, Ken.
Thank you so much, Peter. As I said, my name is Kenneth. I run an outfit called Stamp Green Tech, where we deal a lot with green technologies, innovation, but we also do a lot of work around trainings and material development. Without much ado, I want to jump into the conversation, and I would ask everyone in this conversation who have attended this webinar, kindly, if you have a question, please put it on the chat, and then we'll be picking them up from there, and then we'll be answering them. Matilda will be helping us correlate all those questions. Starting with you, Peter, who are these emerging SMEs, if you could try to define them? And at the same time, can we ask, you can answer, can existing SMEs still be emerging? You know?
Thank you so much, Ken, for the good question.
Yeah.
I think emerging is a very nice word, because I think also for the developing countries, they are being called emerging economies. But from the context where I come from, I think working with also innovators, startups, and all those, starting small, I think that is when you're referred to as an SME, depending on your size. Could be micro, could be, depending on the size. But I would classify them whether old or new. I would call them, they're all MSMEs. Whether emerging probably depends now on what you're working on in terms of the context of the global context. And coming from where I work, we work with a lot of these people because we work with CBOs, and it depends on where you start. It could be and your form of registration probably before we even get to a point of where you're a full enterprise and doing your P&L. You could start as a small group at home or a small group at the community, and then with a common purpose of empowering yourselves and the community. Yeah. So that's what I would classify, for lack of a better definition. But the word emerging, I think, speaks to the contemporary, or how contemporary are you in terms of, for example, Ken, you're doing green energy. That's a new thing, You're in tandem with whatever the global context is. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Peter. So if I hear you right, you're saying it all depends on where you are. I want to throw this to Wangari. What is your take on this? Who are these emerging SMEs? And also, you could think around, can old SMEs, people have been there for 20 years, can they still continue to be, every year they emerging?
Thank you for that inquiry, Kenneth. And also, I'm glad to just speak on from where Waiganjo has actually left off. The context of emerging is really about innovation. And tapping into your very last question, so can an old SME be an emerging one? It is really about the context. Allow me to pick on one area that has actually become quite emergent in this time we are in: ESG reporting. ESG reporting, environmental, social, and governance reporting, has become part and parcel of the reporting, not only reporting financial reporting, but also reporting on the environmental, social, and governance audit of an organization. We've seen this with large organizations, and also we now have SMEs that are starting off, or startups that are starting off from the onset with the considerations of the environmental, social, and governance aspects of their business. That is what I would see as when we talk about the emerging SME. You will still be in manufacturing because, for example, you are called into cosmetics and you want to be able to get into cosmetics as an SME. But the way you will get in the cosmetics industry as an SME will not be the way another organization got in 5 or 10 years ago. Because then you will go in with the considerations. Now, when you take into consideration the ESG elements, you will be guided by how you will determine where do you source your materials from. How is labor taken care of in those areas that you're sourcing your materials for? So emerging SMEs may not necessarily in one context be transforming the industry, but they will be transforming the way the industry operates. Allow me to pick on a second part when we think about the word emerging SMEs. And here I will look at what are the key trends that are actually revolutionizing our economies and also just the way we are operating today. We are in the stage of hyper digitization. And so that means when we talk about an emerging SME, then that emerging SME, back again, it could be an existing one, and now it is now getting into what is a new phase, where has life moved into, or it's a new entity that's starting off. We have hyper digitization. So how are you making use of technology so that it can be able to? Yes. How are you making use? Yes. How are you making use of technology so that then it can be able to, one, be able to amplify the work that you do. Number two, enable probably what you're doing to be able to reach much more people than previously was possible. Let us look at, for example, a micro small enterprise that is getting into financial services. Today, you do not need to have any physical premises, which you call, this is my banking hall. And you can get into the financial services industry and become a lender to now either mothers or women who are in different areas. So I really think it's about the context, but then there are certain elements about it when we think about just where the world is moving into. That's when now you get to become the emergent in that particular context. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much. So the context of what is emergence and where you are and what you're doing is very key. Kevin, I can see you back, and I want to throw a quick question to you. And what's the role of these emerging SMEs on the economy, particularly in the context of Kenya, having worked in the financial sector and all that? What role do they play, particularly these emerging ones?
Thank you so much, Ken. Sorry, I got cut off a bit. So a bit of my background is that I did I don't know to which point I lost you guys. I think I must have gone out of network somewhere. So basically, it's having worked in the banking sector and lending to the SMEs. And now being a consultant, I would say it's the next revolution, because as we see, even the Kenya Revenue Authority realizes a lot happening within that space, not just the KRA. And I was mentioning, I don't know if they could hear me, the political space is also changing to realize that this middle and the micro and the SMEs, they actually, the next revolution, they're creating the momentum in terms of economic development. The role they play, one is they give employment to the young people that are actually able to now make the necessary purchases and turn the economy around in terms of consumption, because we know as much as the money is in the government hands, it needs to circulate. So it plays a role by giving employment. Secondly, it also is able to bring in foreign investment in regards to pumping in of money that comes from either their goods are sold out to, let's say, our neighboring Uganda. It enables the balance of economic balance in terms of foreign inflows. They come into the country. So it's quite a good, it's a very vibrant space. And what I can say, it enlightens also that there are so many innovations coming up. So it expands the economy from the areas of now innovation, like what our previous, the person was mentioning about technology. I mean, they expand the economy because they come up with ideas, the innovations that come about. It drives even in terms of the lending that we see. The banking sector is growing because these SMEs get the lendings. They also drive the economy from that particular angle. So what I can say is that it's the next frontier, and going by the digital space that is happening and the innovations that are taking place, it is the next space just to watch. Either you are left out or you're within that space. So that is what I can say from a top line perspective right now.
Thank you so much, Kevin. And I want to pick on that aspect of the innovation. And if you look around, we have so many emerging SMEs. And everybody, like in the Kenyan context, is a copy-paste aspect. Everybody is playing a certain role. People are tackling the same challenges. and they are nearly offering the same solutions. So how do we help these people so that they become unique in themselves, so that they are able to fit in the emerging economies? Maybe Peter, from your perspective as a non-profit, how do we address this? Because everybody is copy pasting and doing the same things, and as they emerge. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Ken, and I totally concur with Wangari and Ken on the issue of emerging. In the context of health, and let me be very specific on health particularly, you find that everybody innovates in every other sector. You'll find people innovating in technology, mobile apps, addressing a certain retail service industry, others in agriculture. You'll find a lot of innovation, but people, I don't know why people are averse or risk averse within the healthcare industry. But as an organization, we've deliberately engaged the youth, and particularly also innovators and social entrepreneurs to innovate and think of solutions in health, right? And one of the things we used to run and innovate a kind of an accelerator program within the organization used to be called Innovate for Life. And this one was specifically people to innovate in health. It is a challenge, but I also think with the discussions around universal health coverage, which is at the lip of everyone in this country and globally, and also being at the center of it, then the conversation and also the issue of COVID has brought in that health is an important component in people's lives. So it's about putting this conversation across so that then people can start thinking of solutions in the industries, or just avoiding copy pasting. Because I have an app for service industry or for policing, then how else can I think? And it's about putting information across and being advocates and being at the center. And I think the CESOC platform is one of the perfect platforms where people can actually get this particular information. I hope I've answered your question, Ken, and happy to contribute, hear the contribution from the rest of my team.
Thank you so much. Wangari, if we can pick on this, innovation, it's the emerging SMEs. It's something that involves intellectual property. So how do we avoid this problem of, being thrown to the courts, being pulled around? We have infringed on other people's IPs as even we try to innovate as emerging SMEs. How do we address this?
Okay. Thank you very much. And just riding on the contribution by Waiganjo with regard to, let me say, I will say their dilemma, which is a very good dilemma, as he puts it at AMREF, with regard to trying to stimulate or to get more innovations that are around healthcare. One thing I'll say is that there is no limit, there is no shortage to the challenges, to the problems. And in other words, what that means is that there is no limit and there is no cap to how many conversions and versions can be developed to be able to resolve one aspect. Walk into any supermarket, you probably find not less than 10 brands of milk, not less than 10 brands of bread, and high chances each and every day, they're not left with a single one there. Actually, there may even be a customer who comes in and requires. What we need to consider when it comes to the aspect of the opportunity for emerging SMEs in the context of innovation is that there is a target that can be served specifically by yourself and by your innovation. And it is not every single target market. So the key thing, and even as we talk about that people are copy pasting, yes, I could copy an initiative that is happening in Bulgaria and come with it to Kenya. Kenya becomes, the innovation becomes that it is now a new market. It is still the same way probably they package the cosmetic in Bulgaria, and the same way they produce it, and I bring it to Kenya. So I innovate on the market. So the opportunity then for the emerging SMEs is to look at what are the needs in society and where are the needs. Then now be able to go and serve them there in the way that now works for those particular communities. You've asked a question with regard to the context that relates to being able to protect the innovations. And when I normally think about the context about protecting innovation, I normally think about it more from the context of how can you stimulate your innovation versus protecting it. You can stimulate your innovation in one of the ways. Number one, start off by your due diligence. If it is a brand identity that you're taking on, it's a logo, a name, verify, check, are there others that have similar ones? Because then, if there are others that have similar ones or even the same, that is the beginning of your dispute. You know, even before you started already on a dispute tangent. Number two, there are laws and protocols which apply in different jurisdictions, and it's important to look at which are your target markets. If the markets you target are, for example, you target a market that is in Tanzania, you target Uganda, and you also target Bulgaria, it is important that you understand the laws and the protocols that apply in those countries with regard to the business that you're getting into, and also at the same time with regard to protecting the sort of business that you're doing or safeguarding your interests. Again, as the SMEs, and because here we're considering ourselves, when you look at the African continental free trade area and also just the growth of the international markets, we are more than our local villages. We are more than our counties. We are now more than our country. We are more than our regional economic blocks. So then what is out there what are the laws and protocols? For instance, for the sake of the business, in business, we have the United Nations has protocols. There are two key protocols. One is called the Ancestral, which guides with regard to how disputes in business are handled. 2 years ago, there is now a new convention by the United Nations. In short, it is called the Singapore Convention on Mediation. These two are very important when it comes to handling cross-border disputes. So as an SME leader, then it's important that you get acquainted to them, because as you move into now new territories, then those are the ones that now affect, in case you have any situation, how do you, one, avoid a dispute? Because prevention is always better than cure, just as in health. Even where disputes are concerned, prevention is better than having to deal with it. So how can you be able to do your due diligence? Then now, secondly, when it's now time for you to be able to venture, then how can you be able to understand what are the protocols, what are the laws that are governing? And then number three, when there is a situation then of a dispute, then it is encouraged that as a micro small enterprise, let us now start looking at ourselves by let me say the resources we have. The resources we have are best used to serve our business, not necessarily for us to go and spend time and maybe like now be able to be in the courts for 5 years. Over 5 years, an SME that's, let's say, for example, in court, I highly suspect your business will not even be in existence. You probably may not even be there. So we now need to consider what are the appropriate ways we can be able to tap into whenever we are in dispute. And that's where now we have certain tiered systems. You can negotiate with the other person. You can be able to get into mediation. You can get into arbitration, which is also like having a micro judge. So there are ways that you can be able to creatively be able to make use of the dispute resolution strategies that are there. Allow me to just also pick that. Then this is the new ways of thinking around dispute resolution are also what you can call the emerging SME. Because remember I said earlier that the emerging SME may not necessarily be that you're now producing cosmetics using for example, new ingredients. It could also be that the way you handle your business. So as an emerging SME, it is about the mindset you're bringing into your business. What are the emerging ways of handling disputes that you can be able to adopt in your business? That also then makes you now be a notch much higher. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Wangari. I think this is, we may not be able to exhaust everything about all this, but I think it's something we'll need to think about having a discussion on this. I want to jump over to Kevin and taking over like two questions that have been asked on the chat, but summarizing them. Kevin, in terms, how can finance and taxes be a hindrance or an enabler for emerging SMEs?
Hello. Yes.
Hello, Kevin. Yes.
Repeat the question again, please.
Okay, my question is, and I wanted you to tackle this because people are asking about taxes and finance.
Yes.
How can this be enablers for emerging SMEs, and how can they also be a challenge to the emerging SMEs?
I think emerging SMEs, we've always talked about the conundrum of having a financial or capital deficiency. And it's always a talk between I have this idea, and when we speak about innovation, versus me not having the capital, or there's someone else with the capital and they do not have the idea. So what I can say, I think even as we speak about the micro and the SMEs, there are various accelerator programs that are usually there, and they help finance the SMEs. So in terms of financing, not just the banking sector, we have various accelerator programs, and some look at it from a social perspective, where we have seed funders, and they're able to give you finances, as long as you can bring to fruition what you have put on paper and be able to actually pan it out well in terms of outcome reporting, the interventions they are going to create. So I think before even you get to the point where you are looking for finances, you must be able to get your idea from your head and put it well on paper, and you can articulate so that even when you are going to a financier, then they can be able to see your idea and the outcomes in terms of what you're going to achieve. If you cannot approach a bank in terms of, probably because most banks look for collateral, then you can approach some of these accelerator programs. We know of the iHubs in Nairobi. We have I think Nairobi Garage. We have so many that if you Google, you can actually see, and they're able to give you seed funding that is actually a grant, and you can start your idea. In terms of taxes, I think this is when you've already started. When you've started, you need to be paying your dues. Give to Caesar what belongs to Caesar, because as you progress on, when you approach some of these financial institutions, the first thing they'll ask you, could you give us your tax returns? Can you give us your books of accounts? And if you do not have that in order, you do not have that level of accounting, then in terms of corporate governance, then you fail and you don't get these finances. So I think it's an enabler in the sense that if you comply and you have your checks in order, checks and balances, you have your corporate governance in order, you pay your taxes, and you have the articulation of your ideas of what you want to put forth, then you can get your finances in form of grants. And if you need structured financings from the banking institution and other lenders that would ask for your collateral, then you need to also have your books in order to be paying your taxes. So in terms of being able to move forward as a micro or as an SME, you must be able to have these checks and balances in order for you to be able to get the finances. I hope I've answered your question.
Yes, thank you, Kevin. Actually, you've even answered what I wanted to ask about compliance, because I think SMEs, most of the times we like shortcuts, and maybe we are very quick, we want to get funding. And I want to jump to Waiganjo, and you could tell us what are some of the things that you look for even as you get into partnership with these new and upcoming SMEs.
Thank you, and I've been asked to put my video on, which is fine, so that I can see you guys. Put the face to the name.
Yeah.
Sorry, I'm in my farm. I'm an entrepreneur as well. So, so yeah, your question is on what exactly we look at. And,
yes.
I just to contribute to what Kevin has said and what has been said before. In terms of tax breaks, in terms of also encouraging and from giving Caesar what belongs to Caesar, I think a role that a government needs to play, and I think that's a conversation that we are having on this platform, the CESO platform, is to have incentives to encourage the SMEs to actually come up, because sometimes the taxes could be heavy to the organization, to this small organization. Therefore, do we have tax breaks, or what incentives are available to make sure that you encourage the SMEs and the people who are coming up, the emerging ones, actually have a proper grounding? We are talking about 5 years. Sometimes even the first 3 years you may not have made anything, and then you're required to probably submit and probably make contributions towards that. But I think in terms of one thing we look at as an organization is alignment. And I mean alignment is being in tandem with what the vision of the organization is. And for us, this comes in two prongs. One, it could be through internal, where we accelerate and try and commercialize or develop solutions from the programs that we do, but also working with other partners. And I can mention a few that we've worked, like 4 of them who've come from the US and they're looking to get into the Kenyan market. And then they come with a different way of doing things. Could be data collection, could be the way they analyze data, technology issues and all that. So one of the things we look at is alignment in terms of strategy and the work that we do, because then at that point you provide a very good ground for these SMEs to actually grow and also get aligned to the market. The other one is a value, shared value approach. Yeah. For example, through a human-centered design, where you sit down to probably address a problem that is affecting the community directly. And this problem could be addressed by a government institution. It's just probably through neglect, or it's not a focus for the government at that moment. So then that's another thing that we look at, whereby you work to empower and create a lasting change within a community. So those are the 2 things as an organization we address and we look at. But of course, now with the third one is we're looking at the current issue of sustainability as an organization. I think one of the things we look at is, of course, looking at how we do things sustainably, moving away from depending on donors, where we now shift our engagement towards now a shared value approach of whereby how does the community benefit, how do you benefit, and how does the community benefit? Basically, so a financial sustainability model, not to look at donor funding and moving away, of course, moving now towards trade rather than aid.
Okay, thank you so much.
Ken, I think if I can add on to something,
yes.
that because the sustainability aspect, which I advise a lot, even for NGOs, because we are moving from aid to trade, and it's important that some of these programs that are actually put forth, they come from the Western world. I think we have always missed the point, because what is doable in South Africa, for example, is not doable in the East African market. So I think the sustainability model needs to be contextualized from a bottom-up approach perspective, or from as they call it, data-driven designs that are able to speak to the environment that they are in. And I think that is quite important, even as we are trying to align ourselves within the various funding models, and also for continuity and to remain relevant as organizations. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Kevin. Before I jump over to Wangari, what is coming out is very simple, that you have to comply from the word go, and sometimes it doesn't need a lot, complying with the taxes and all that. I want to jump over to Wangari to make a comment.
Thank you very much, Ken, and also for the contributions by the other colleagues who are panelists. And my contribution on this context, that the direction of the discussion was especially around the context that relates to government. It takes me a bit, or I'd like us to take just a step into looking into, when we talk about an economy, what is an economy? And then also, what are those factors that are normally considered when now you talk about an economy? Then when you talk about that you are an emerging SME in that economy, then what would you be, either what value would you be adding, or how would you be in that economy? So economies are normally, an economy is normally considered with regard to the context of the production and consumption of goods and services. In very simple terms, it's about produce, consume goods and services. And the aim of that of the production of the goods and services is so that then there are needs that are going to be met. when we now look at an economy, there are certain ways that, there are certain factors that are normally looked at when you talk about an economy. So you'd have elements such as what you can call the cash rate, which is normally what you call the interest rates. We also have the aspects of GDP, the gross domestic product. We also have the aspect of the monitoring in terms of the health of the economy versus the global economy. They are at the same time looking into now the labor market. I mean, how is the labor market performing? Do people have jobs? Don't they have jobs? At the same time, then we also have the aspect of exchange rates, and we had the contribution with regard to SMEs being able to contribute to that, especially as they engage in the import-export business. Again, we also can look at, when you talk about the economy, in terms of, okay, are we focusing on the industrial, that's around manufacturing, or around the services economy? We also have what you call the household consumptions. I mean, what is the demand for what is available or being produced within that particular economy? And then we also have the aspect of the balance of trade, and also the attraction of capital or investment. And that's now the attraction of investment is now an area like now what Waiganjo was speaking into when he was talking about what they do look at. When we now introduce the context of the emerging SMEs into what has traditionally been or continues on to be, when I use the word traditionally, it doesn't mean it has been removed, it has been shifted. The economy still looks at production and consumption of goods and services. Then when we talk about the emerging SMEs, is now where we now bring in now those elements that we now, when we talk about the aspect of, just as has been raised, sustainability. Sustainability has not been a vocabulary that has been there around economies. Right now, we understand that, yes, even from our panelists, that when they are either coaching or working with SMEs, they do talk about those elements. Again, we've not been having vocabulary like human-centered design. That is vocabulary that has come up because we need to now go back into that the economy is actually serving people and it's actually being driven by people. We have not had vocabulary emphasized like wellness. If you are an emerging SME or you're an SME now today, that is now words or vocabularies that you would be having. So there is new elements that are coming in when you now start assessing the economy. What is the wellness of the people of Kenya? We have happiness index. We've normally been having the ease of doing business, which has been run by the ease of doing business. Happiness index is a new index that has come up. So for us as the SMEs or as persons who are in the SME space, then those new tangents now start becoming very, very important for us. Sustainability, wellness, that we're dealing with human beings, and it's not just only about the resource that is called capital, but we also have other resources, and how are they coming on and integrating together? Thank you.
Thank you so much. I want to pick on the aspect of the sustainability as Wangari have picked it up. And I want to throw this to Waiganjo. Is it time for a paradigm shift for the SMEs to stop operating the same way they have been operating, waiting for the government to do things for them, waiting for grant? Is it time for a paradigm shift so that we can be able to be sustainable in the way we do things?
I couldn't agree more with you, Ken, and thank you for that very good question.
Yeah.
I may not be able to speak to the actual numbers in terms of foreign direct investment, but you could, from the latest report, Kenya is ranked, I think, number 2, or we are the apex in terms of attracting new funding. And when you look at where this money is going into, it's going into the SMEs in terms of startups, in terms of the things that people are actually engaging in, innovations and all that. And one aspect about that is, and we have all these venture capitals who are coming in, they want to accelerate a program, they give you seed fund, and then they look at develop a viable financial model or a business model that can be able to make sure that your organization is sustainable, can be able to outlive the seed funding, and you're able to stand as an organization and make operations and achieve your both financial impact and social impact. Yeah. But in terms of sustainability, definitely this is the right time to do that. Our country in 2013, one big thing apart from the elections happened. We were rebased. And then we became a lower middle income. The current conversation in parliament of whether our GDP to equity ratio is there. Those are questions now. We might be rebased earlier than to a bigger category, which reduces the amount of donor funding we expect. And this also dictates has consequences, because then you start discussing things around being self-sufficient, moving away from aid to trade. And I think that's something that needs to be inculcated in new or emerging SMEs in terms of sustainability. I couldn't agree more with Wangari on the new emerging areas, which are things that were never being done. They were never traditionally funded. But now you want to make sure that you can run them as enterprises rather than depending on something just to solve a solution and go. Yeah. From an organizational perspective, we've taken up things that were initially donor funded, developed a business model for them, and now we are commercializing that so that the organization can benefit, but also an SMEs. And I'll speak to that if we get some time. I know we don't have much time, but one of the things is we build the capacity of the MSMEs. I've included the medium, small, micro, but we also have the medium. Which now it's about them forming institutions or functions or business units that are actually can be able to operate independently, and of course to achieve your social mission, or could be necessarily, let me remove the word social mission, I tend to get inclined to social mission, but now to achieve your mission, but also doing that in a sustainable way, so that 5 years down the line you don't you open something, you achieve the first year of profits, and then the next thing you don't have anything to do. Yeah. So thinking about value addition and all that, that would be my contribution to that. But sustainability is prime and is ripe. And I will tell you, even from a non-profit, not very many organizations would have my role. And so as an organization, AMREF has taken a step to make sure that we are here 10 years, 20 years to come, because the mission of the organization will not be achieved. We need to be here to be able to solve the problems that are still existing. So being deliberate in the decisions that we make also as an organization. But these are conversations that needs to be driven within the sector. Thank you.
I think
Kevin,
yes.
Before you answer, because I have a question for you in relation to what Waiganjo have said.
Yes.
As you try to give your input, I also wanted you to address some of the financial things or matters that emerging SMEs needs to put into place if they are going to be sustainable. Thank you. As you also contribute to what the conversation before.
I think that's a very important and pertinent question, because for you to be able to be sustainable, then you must have done your your homework very well in terms of a baseline, a research, or even a desk research, because when you're going to be sustainable, then you must be able to cover your costs. So the first thing is you must be able to know exactly what you're going into, how much is going to expend in terms of you doing whatever you're going to do when you're trying to meet that need as an SME and micro. Then once you establish your numbers, then you can be able to look for capital. Once you look for capital, and here you must be very well placed to put a very proper document that is sound, that is tight-proof, so that when you're approaching a grant or even a financial institution, then they can be able to see your mind through and see how sustainable or how much of an expense it is and how you're going to keep yourself profitable at the bottom line. So I think once you have your research, you've done it well, I believe the next step is to have a proper document. Then you look for finances, either from a grant perspective or even from a financial perspective. Then once you get the finances, be able to expend as per the program, have a budget line that is realistic. We talk about it being realistic, which is time-bound, that is very alive to what is going around. Then if you have any deviations, keep reporting, because as much as you get some of this funding, they usually have segments of sometimes milestone reporting that before you go to the next tranche of getting finances, then you must report how accountable, how effective you are in terms of the finances that you've got.
And once you are able to put these numbers in place, then you can be able to forge forward and actually push on. Is it a product or is it a service? Then you can push forth and be able to get those returns. Then you can recoup from whatever finance, from your financial capital that you got in. And then you can become sustainable, because it means you do not need funding anymore. You're able to pay back what you got, and you can remain relevant. Like Weganjo is saying, there are very few people within that space, even in the NGO sector. Having also consulted as a social entrepreneurship expert, those are pertinent issues that need to come forth before you actually think about how sustainable you're going to be. What I wanted to add on before you asked me that question is that I think I'm more Kenyanized. I don't know how I can put it, but I'll use an example. Like, there's a guy who came up with a sign language glove that can be able to speak.
Yes.
Yeah, and he's a Kenyan. Unfortunately, that idea was taken up by. He gave forth his proper document. He had his own quite innovative, because he was solving a need, and that's what innovation is about. And it was picked up by foreigners, and now it's being sold within that context, and they patented it in that, and he got a small fraction. So what I can advise SMEs and micros, as much as they're innovating, do not sell yourself short. Always look at you as an intellectual property, and it is worth much more than the capital that you're going to get. So don't sell yourself short. Do it with a lot of gusto, with a lot of confidence. If you're solving a need, then go forth and do it confidently. And if you have a proper document, anyone can fund you. So the issue is never the lack of finances, but the lack of ideas. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Kevin. What a way to as we come to a close for this discussion. And I want now each one of us to have our final remarks. And Wangari, as somebody in the legal field, I think it's something we had really talked about. You know, we sell our ideas. We call it, I used to call it having a cup of coffee at Java, and you sell all your ideas over a cup of coffee. Because I know we have a lot of needs as emerging SMEs. What are some of your final remarks in relation to this? And you could address that aspect of what is my light and what is the far I can go in selling my ideas and as a new and an upcoming SME.
Okay, so coming from the dispute resolution space, which is where I do operating, and especially innovating around just how people can be able to have very exciting disputes, and out of those disputes still have great relationships. That's the context that I do come from. So coming from that particular area, you can be an idea generator and a seller of ideas. There is nothing wrong with that. That is also proper a business. Every single day when people wake up and they go into organizations and they are paid to be in those organizations, you are paid to offer what you have in exchange for. And so that salary, or when I pay for the goods that you have made, then that is exchange of value. So the key thing that comes in where the emerging SMEs and also especially startups and also just innovators is about the context of being able to do valuation of an idea, valuation of a business. That is an area that requires much more development. There are experts, there are partners, and that is where now we would be able now to have, for example, someone can be able to connect or contact Kevin Muriuki. I have this idea, and yes, I would like to seek for partners to be able to develop it much further, because what I'm coming in with is a prototype of it, but we need to be able to have further development of it. Then I need to be able to reach out to other people. So can you help me to value this? If it's made in its full form, what would be its value 10 years to come? This is not new. This is what businesses typically do. When, for example, a multinational has a new an idea for a new soft drink mixture, they look at what is its future market potential. Then now with that, based on that decision, they now decide, do we go to market with it now? Or do we go to market with it now knowing that in the next 4 years, it will not have a market, so we are just going to be able to tap into the market now, and after 4 years, we know that we will pull it out of the market? Or is this a brand or a soft drink that we know will be able to be in the market for the next eternity or for the next 20 years? So that ability to do the valuation is one of the very key strengths that would be a very powerful strength for the startups, the innovators, and for the micro and small enterprises to be able to tap into, or really just to know where can they be able to get that particular support. Then the other aspect that comes in as you mentioned with regard to ideas is we also need to consider that we can be able to have collaborative approaches to the ideas that we do have. And so as a result of that, own them jointly or own them in other ways. When I have an idea, probably then someone else has now, let's say, the manufacturing ability. Then probably someone else has the ability to be able to generate the raw material. That becomes then a loop that we can be able to develop together and then own that particular either innovation or the outcome of it jointly together, or be able to have shares. And this is now back again, just as similar like organizations have shares. In coming to my statements as we are closing on this particular section, I wish to say that just back again that as I highlighted, that there are certain trends that are really influencing the economy and the economies, and also just how the world is really going. Hyper-digitization. We have the considerations of now the aspects like the ESG, environmental, social, and corporate governance elements. And also a key thing that we need to remember is also the geopolitical influences. Right now, it's a race for who will be able to have which particular territory. And when you think of it, it is not driven by any other factor apart from the factor that it is about the creation of wealth. The reason why we have now countries that are dashing off to come to Kenya is because they are looking at how they can be able to create, to be able to tap into Kenya to create wealth for their nations. Why is this important? Is because then, yes, our economies continue to become stronger and stronger. Remember, like, for example, currencies today, the foreign exchange rates. It's just in the recent years that we have been able to be seeing that the economies are actually even being benchmarked not only to the US dollar. It has been a journey by certain countries because they want their currencies to actually, or their currencies actually now being used to benchmark by nations. So it's a race for nations to be able to create wealth. And the reason why nations are in a race to be able to create wealth is because then by creating that wealth, that is when then you are able to become probably a more stable economy. And by being a more stable economy, then we now look into the aspects that are important. And I did highlight earlier, issues to do with labor, issues to do with the production and consumption. You now are able to provide jobs to your people. You are now able to produce goods and services that can be able to satisfy your people. Then in provision of that employment, then at the same time, you're able to now also be able to do something that's very important, and it's tied to what you talk about when you talk about innovation, to develop skills of your people so that then they can continue on to innovate, developing skills of managers, developing skills of leaders, a very subtle but a very important element. And it's what makes education to become a very important factor around when we talk about the economy. Because the education, whether it's the education in the schools, or whether it's education that you get when now you choose to take on programs like the one that we're having now, or in other avenues just from society, it's important that in our economies, as we look into the development of a stronger micro and small enterprise sector, that we have the development of the mindsets of what you can call the leaders, the managers, and the business owners who are coming on. And that really excites me because that's also the context around education. And I think that's a very, very important part. In the closing, do not be scared of the disputes that come around when as a micro or a small enterprise. It is part of doing business. The issue is about what appropriate avenues do you tap into, do you make use of? Because remember, As a savvy micro or small enterprise, the resources you do have, it's about allocation of those resources. So choose appropriately as you choose the appropriate dispute resolution avenue for your enterprise. I thank you for this opportunity, and it's been a great delight to be able to be in the discussion with Mr. Kevin Muriuki and also with Mr. Peter Iganjo, and thank you for coordinating us, Ken Dua and Madam Matilda Maseno. Thank you. God bless you.
Thank you so much, Wangari. Peter, what are your parting shots?
Thank you, Ken. I'm listening in to Wangari, and I'm all excited. My parting shot is this. Partnership is key. And I couldn't agree more with Wangari on return on investment, right? So return on investment is what are you getting? And speaking to that is, first of all, partnership is key. And these entrepreneurs need to be handheld, but we need to make sure that they do not go through the mistakes that other people have gone. And that's why you're seeing a lot of accelerator programs, incubation programs, so that people can be able to learn and get to know what other people, other organizations or other people have gone through. So to me, I would encourage people to think and diversify their thinking in terms of ideas, to include sectors that, like healthcare is one, very lucrative, as much as people would want to run away from it, but it's one of the big things that will be relevant in this economy. So if you get into that space, you don't have to be a doctor, you don't have to be a nurse. Sometimes solutions even come from people who are not within the sector. So partnership, think about return on investment, and also this partnership needs to be anchored by law. And I'll speak towards, as CESOC, I know we are doing this in a different angle where we are encouraging intellectual property protection. And I know the government has put measures in place. KIPI is in place. So, and I think that's the process of hand-holding, the process of you being handheld to be able to learn, protect your innovation or your idea or the things that you want to do from a legal perspective. Thank you, and it's been a pleasure hearing from Wangari and Kevin as well. And I think it's been a very useful session. Thank you, and God bless you.
Yeah, thank you so much, Peter. Kevin, what are your parting shots?
Mine is a word of encouragement, because when I look at it, for those who are most of the innovators and micro and small enterprises, they fear to share the idea. So when they fear to share the idea, and rightfully so, that is going to be replicated or someone is going to run away with it, what I'd say is have a legal mind, get into non-disclosure agreements, the NDAs. If you get into, if you want to share your idea with somebody like a consultant who can be able to put it on paper before you go to the next step, have an NDA that you can cover yourself within that arrangement. I think Wangari has spoken to that. The next is be able to, once you share the idea, then you can approach the likes of KIPI and intellectual property protectionist kind of organizations within Kenya, and they are allowed in law. Then you can cover yourself before now we go all out in terms of having that idea to fruition. And return on investment, if you do not have that kind of skill and level to evaluate your business or even your idea, there are always experts who can actually be able to help you out. And it's not too much. Sometimes even you get in collaboration with the consultants and the experts, they tell you once you're able, because once they see your idea, they can be able to tell you once you get to the next level of public financing, then probably you can cover my costs as a consultant or even as one of the people who refined your ideas. So do not be scared to have to put your idea forth. Cover yourself from a legal perspective. Cover yourself that you can be able to actually have you have evaluated your business and your idea in the rightful manner. You don't get shortchanged. Have that projection in terms of return on investment, and you can be able to see that this is actually something that is watertight. And whichever industry you are, sometimes like what Peter is saying, you may not be skilled in a certain sector, but your idea is revolutionary. So I think my parting shot is do not be scared. There are people out there ready to help. We have not fallen short of capital. Most funders actually have fallen short of ideas. So don't be scared. Go forth, approach industry experts, and we can be able to move our economy forward in terms of innovation and expanding the economy in terms of goods and services. So thank you so much. Thank you for being for the invitation, Matilda, Wangare, and Peter, very insightful, and Ken for the moderation. Thank you so much, and have a great afternoon.
Yeah, thank you so much, everyone. I think the take home today is do not fear. Consult the experts. We have Wangari here, we have Peter here, we have Kevin, and even other people. Talk to Sesok, Matrida here, and whatever you need to seek for services. Remember that we have a role to play in the growing of the economy locally, regionally, internationally as emerging SMEs. Thank you, everyone, for attending this. I want to hand it over to Matilda to close the session. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone, for joining us. Thank you, Ken, for the great moderation. Wangare, Peter Waiganjo, Kevin, thank you so much for the insightful nuggets that we've gleaned from this session. We will continue to engage. For those who are interested in continuing to ask questions, you can reach out to me and I will forward your questions to these great panelists. And because we can never cover everything in these short sessions, but thank you so much for the great engagement, and we hope that our members are learning from this, and as we learn, let us continue also to encourage one another. So I thank everyone for joining in, all the members, all the friends, all the partners for joining in, and I hope that as we continue, we will continue to support each other, and that you will keep joining us for the upcoming webinars and iTalks. We have our next online session will be a webinar on the 16th of September. That is next week on Thursday. And we will be sending out the posters and sharing the links. So kindly join in and let us also continue to learn in this great space. We are growing, we're innovating, and we are also learning great things. So thank you so much. Anything from anybody? I believe the questions have been, most of them have been handled. If you have any further questions, kindly reach out. We will share with the panelists. So thank you, everyone, and have a great day.